Well, it's a great day to have you on. I wonder what your comment would be before we get started on the real, the issue that we're going to talk about. Do you have any comments on what we're looking at in terms of Trump's taxes that have been released?
It's incredible in at least three different ways, I'll just say. One is, he has presented himself as this great business person, and I think a lot of people supported him based on him being a great business person. I mean, I could at least understand that. I mean, I'm not in that camp, but I could at least, he did great things with this business, that business. He'll do it for the country. And what we see is he's a horrible business person. Everything he touches crashes. So, if you want someone who's a great business person, Donald Trump is the last person you want. The second is, we knew he was a scammer, but I mean, my God, this just, I didn't go through in great detail. I read the New York Times article, but, he gives his daughter $760,000. Good for him. Wants to get, but that's not a tax deduction. If I want to give my family money, I can do that, but I don't get to deduct that from my taxes. I mean, what sort of joke is that? $70,000 for his hair. I mean, I'll just say, if he actually paid $70,000 for that hair, he's got ripped off. But
see, that's what I was thinking. Like, he actually needs to pay $70,000 to get that hair looking at
I
least
don't know.
marginally.
Should be able to do better than that for $70,000.
Orange dye is very expensive.
But there's an incredible amount of They got this big estate in upstate New York that they had as a vacation place. And they talked about that. His kids, we go there every summer. And they wrote it off as an investment property. That's not an investment property. That's a vacation place, which, again, it's fine. Go ahead. So anyhow, just beyond what any of us could have imagined. And then there's the simple policy point that we need more enforcement. I mean, these things were not hard, and again, people go, oh, IRS, I don't want the IRS cracking down on me because, I took $20 to, move someone's trash and now they're going to, no, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about stuff like this. And it's easy to find. And basically what the Republicans have done, with the cooperation of some Democrats, but what they've done over the last quarter century is they've gutted the IRS enforcement's ability. So you could do all these things. You go, oh, I'm going to give $760,000 to my daughter. They'll never see, and that's just crazy. And the thing is, this isn't spending money. There's a lot of research on this, and it shows, I think last thing I saw, we get $3 back for every dollar we spent on enforcement. So we hire another, 1,000 people, whatever it might take. So we could audit these very rich people, and better or worse, there aren't a lot of them, so when they play games like this, we'll get them.
Dina, the thing that strikes me in this area is people's desire for a business person to run a country. And I believe that this really highlights the difference between having someone who is a business person versus having someone who is a public servant. Now, public servants pay their taxes, and it is time to have a discussion about the fact that it is patriotic to pay your taxes. And then if you don't like the way the taxes are being spent, well, stay involved in your democracy, talk to your electeds, that kind of thing. But basically, Donald Trump's base, I was saying before you came on, Donald Trump's base and the Republican Party for the last I don't know how many, my whole lifetime, in decades, have been trying to convince the American public that taxes are bad, taxes are a terrible thing, and therefore Trump being a tax cheat is going to play well with his base. They don't care. And the fact that we're going to pound away at this all week long, or maybe the debate will knock us off pounding on this. We're pounding away at something that does not do anything to help with electoral politics. I don't think his taxes are going to convince one person. We all knew he was cheating on his taxes.
We'll have to see. I mean, it really, that someone cuts things, around the edge, this or that. But these things are really gross. I mean, giving $760,000 to your kid and then writing it off on your taxes. I don't know. I mean, he in the last campaign, he said, Hillary Clinton said you don't pay any taxes. And he goes, that's because I'm smart. So,
Exactly.
So the idea is, okay, smart people don't pay taxes. So the rest of us who do are stupid,
Right.
So the fact is, most of his voters, I'll bet, do pay their taxes. They might cheat some, they might pay $200 less than but they don't cheat like Donald Trump. They don't pay $750 or in many years $0. So
just seeing that the public good, which is what taxes are supposed to be for, is something that you should get out of and that you should cheat out of, and that you don't recognize. It suggests that you don't recognize that you didn't actually make this money. All the people who worked for you, all the roads they were able to drive in on that were paid for by tax dollars. It's a joint success. If there was a success, I mean, Trump's taxes show that there was basically just a giant loss after loss after loss. So, it's morally reprehensible in terms of the idea that contributing to the public good is something to be is only what stupid people do, especially when you're benefiting from the public good. How could he just being a public servant and having that attitude? The two do not jive at all.
I don't think he thinks of himself as a public servant.
No. I mean, we are supposed to think he's a public servant. Why voters are supposed to vote for a public servant?
That is his job title, but I'm just saying I don't think he thinks of it that way.
Well, we've gone a little off the rail, and I do appreciate hearing your feedback about this situation, since it was breaking news. But we brought you here specifically to talk about last week, an official with China's CDC announced it may have a vaccine available for widespread distribution by November or December. But here in the U.S., we'd have to wait at least a few months and probably longer to even have that available. And that was by design of the U.S. government, according to everything, but also according to you. You're here today to talk with us about how cooperative research will save lives and would also save us a lot of money. Can you talk a little? Thanks for joining us, Dean. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
In your recent piece, you talk about the alternative route the U.S. could have taken in its coronavirus vaccine research. Can you talk about that, please?
Yeah, so it's a fairly simple point. Science advances most quickly as a cooperative enterprise. That's not even controversial. I mean, scientists, economists like to think of themselves as scientists, take that or leave it. But people who are real scientists, they'll tell you, I want to know, as a scientist, I want to know what this person over, in New York or in Germany or in China, wherever they might be, I want to know what they found. They did an experiment, did it turn out well, did it turn out poorly? So I benefit from knowing that as quickly as possible. So if there's something useful that I want to build on, or maybe I'm trying the same thing, I realize, that's a dead end. This guy or woman just did it, that it's not going anywhere. We could have approached the coronavirus treatments and vaccine that way. And what's interesting, I'm saying this entirely as a non-scientist who's just read some things about this, there was an awful lot of cooperation early. So apparently they were able to learn way more about the structure of the coronavirus very early on because everyone was sharing. So you had scientists in Europe, in China, in the United States, and South Korea, everyone there putting stuff online. So they very quickly learned many things about the coronavirus. Now, we could have continued that. And what's interesting is we put up a huge amount of public money. So we always have a lot of public money in research. It's underplayed, but the National Institutes of Health spends over $40 billion a year. We have BARDA, the Biological Advanced Research Development Authority. They spend, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 billion. I'd have to look at the exact number, but we probably spend close to 50 billion a year on biomedical research. So it's a lot of money that the government's actually putting up front. But
our tax dollars, just for clarity, our tax dollars that Trump did not contribute to a dime of. Just make that clear.
So Trump goes, okay, we're going to have Operation Warp Speed, $10 billion. We're going to throw it out there, get a vaccine, get treatments. This is a good thing to do. But we could have done that as open research. Now, ordinarily, most drug companies, Pfizer, Merck, pick your company, they're going, we can't have open research because we want a patent. And then we're going to charge real high prices. We've got a patent monopoly. The government will give us a patent monopoly, and that's how we'll pay for the research. Well, that's how they do it. I mean, I'm not attacking them for that. That's the structure.
Wait a minute. That's how they pay for the research that was freely and openly funded by the U.S. government.
Well, yes, there's always a large part of it that is freely and openly financed by the government, but they do more. I'm not saying they do zero. So they'll take that research and they'll develop a drug and then they'll test it. But yeah, there's a large.
Isn't that the risk of doing business? That's the risk. Business is a risk. That's a risk, right? The research.
Yeah. But what's striking here is we paid a huge amount up front. And my poster child here is Moderna. We paid them about $1 billion up front. So when they talk about risk, what was your risk? Suppose that, we're not done yet. So who knows if they'll get anything, but let's say they don't. Let's say that they complete their trials and it's December, January, and they evaluate the data and they go, look, it's not that effective. There'd be no point. Well, they didn't lose anything. We paid them $1 billion. So the point I'm saying is, since we're paying the money up front, why are we giving patent monopolies? Why isn't it all open?
Mm-hmm.
And getting back to China, if we had done this cooperatively, obviously we don't expect the U.S. to pay for research for the whole world. I mean, we don't expect sub-Saharan Africa, poor countries, to pay for it. But, let's share it with, figure out we're going to pay X, Germany will pay Y, and England will have everyone cough up, China will cough up their fair share, and everything will be fully open. And what that would mean is, let's say China comes in, they have a vaccine before us. I don't know for sure. I'm just going on what's in the paper. I'm not an expert, but it looks like they're ahead of us. So if they have a vaccine, in that case, we'd have a vaccine too.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone would have it, so it wouldn't be a case where we might be sitting around for months, with this virus totally out of control. And in China, they're going, well, we're starting to administer this vaccine. We're protecting our frontline workers, teachers, people who are most exposed, people in nursing homes, people at greatest risk. And we're going, God, I wish we could do that, but, we don't have the vaccine.
Can we talk about the safety of a vaccine that is created based not on shared research?
Well, there's a big risk in this. I mean, again, there's a real incentive. When you have a patent monopoly, there's an incentive to lie, just be blunt, lie about the safety and effectiveness of a vaccine in this case, or more commonly drugs. And it happens all the time. I mean, this shouldn't be a radical proposition. We're talking about the opioid crisis now. Well, why do we have an opioid crisis? Well, one factor, I'm not going to say it's the only thing is, but one factor was the drug companies that were producing the new generation of opioids lied. They told doctors, they told researchers that, oh, these aren't addictive. It's not like the old opioids, so you don't have to worry. You could prescribe these to your patients. You don't have to worry. Well, they knew that wasn't true, and they paid a lot of money in settlements because it was true. They lied. So when you give someone a patent monopoly, you give them an enormous incentive to be dishonest about the safety and effectiveness of their drugs. I mean, we hope our drug authorities, the Food and Drug Administration, will catch that. But the reality is they have limited resources.
Haven't they been also like reconfigured by the Trump administration, like so many other of our agencies?
Yeah, no, particularly in the case of a vaccine right now, you would have to be nuts to take a vaccine exclusively on the FDA's authority. I mean, if the same vaccine is approved by the agencies in France or Germany, pick your country, then fine, that's someone we could trust. But at this point, I don't think there's any doubt. Trump is telling the head of the FDA, look, you're going to approve this, so as soon as the vaccine's there, he's going to say, you're going to approve it. And I do not count on Mr. Hahn having the integrity to say, no, we're going to do what the science warrants. If we are convinced this is safe and effective, we're going to prove that. I don't trust him to do that because he's, get hydroxychloroquine. What was the evidence for it? Trump said, use it. Said, okay.
Tell people to drink bleach.
Yeah. No, so it's, he's repeatedly given in, more recently on the, I'm forgetting the exact term, the plasma patients, where there's some evidence, I'm not claiming to be a scientist here, but clearly they went around the ordinary process. And I don't want to see the FDA going around the ordinary process to improve Donald Trump's reelection chances. And that's what's been happening.
Dean Baker, co-founder of the Center for Economic Policy Research. Can you talk a little bit about if, say, Moderna or Pfizer, one of these other U.S. drug companies, ends up developing a vaccine, whether it be safe and effective or just the one that the FDA decides that they're going to back for whatever reasons that we just discussed, you say they're going to sell it at a considerable profit, and then they're going to be sharing the money with their top executives and their shareholders, and not the American people, which is what one would expect of a for-profit pharmaceutical industry. Who's going to buy those vaccines? Are our insurance companies going to buy them? Are we going to be buy them as taxpayers for our frontline workers? Who is going to be getting gouged here?
Yeah, well, I expect most people have insurance. Insurers will pay for it. They'd be crazy not to, basically, because if if you're covered by health insurance and they have an option to pay, what they're talking about is $40. I mean, it will remain to be seen. It's 2 shots, so $40. And what the actual, if you just said, okay, what does it cost to manufacture and distribute and cover your costs and make a normal profit? Be about $4. So we're talking about 1,000% markup. So that's the difference. And yeah, so presumably our insurers, if you're on Medicare, Medicaid, the government will pick up the tab. So a lot of money going to their shareholders, to their top execs. And I should point out that those people have already cashed out to a large extent. So when they announced before that they were getting big grants for the government, of course, their stock price soared, and a lot of their top execs sold out, or at least sold out a lot of their shares. So these people have already made, in many cases, tens of millions of dollars, and they stand to, of course, make much, much more. But they're making out like bandits.
Aye. So what would it take for politicians to put our health over their relationships with big pharma? What would it take?
Well, I think some of this just has to be putting it on the table because people are really mystified. I often give talks on this. And I go, oh, drugs are cheap. And people go, who's that idiot? Drugs are expensive. I just paid blood. I go, I know you pay a lot for drugs. They're cheap to manufacture. So they're expensive because of patent monopolies. And it's one of these things that, I raise with, I'm not talking about grab someone off the street. I mean, policy types, then, they don't even think about this. So what we have to say is, there are alternative ways to finance drugs. And that's why this is so instructive. Go, oh, how would you do it? Would you have the government pay? I go, we just did have the government pay. We had the government give Moderna $1 billion. So to act like that's a crazy thing to do, now they're getting the patent monopolies on top of it. But, $1 billion, I just tried to back out the numbers. That had to cover their cost and then quite a bit over that. It's not that big a company. You can't spend $1 billion in, 5 or 6 months when you're not a very large company. So we covered their costs. So, we have to get people to think about patent monopolies. And as I say, they're just treated as a matter of fact. And there's just an enormous amount of money at stake in prescription drugs alone. We'll spend $500 billion this year on drugs that would cost us less than $100 billion in a free market. So that gap of $400 billion, that's more than 5 times the food stamp budget. I use that as a basic comparison because we have all these people running around, oh, food stamps, all my money goes to, okay, whatever. You like food stamps, you don't like them. I'm not arguing that here. 5 times as much goes to the drug companies because we give them patent monopolies as opposed to having their drugs sell on a free market. So we need to have a serious discussion about this. And we aren't there yet.
Once a vaccine is profitable, we're seeing this merger of state and corporation. Once a vaccine is profitable, do you expect red states who are currently eschewing contact tracing and denying the disease is worse than a cold or a flu? Do you see sort of the media and their electeds changing their attitudes in order to encourage people to take this vaccine that is probably, if it goes to Moderna, I believe going to directly financially profit our president and his family?
Well, I don't know about it. I mean, I wouldn't rule that out. I personally don't know whether they have any direct ties to Moderna's.
Pretty sure they do.
I'm saying
they funnel it all through Jared, is my understanding.
Yeah. I sure as hell wouldn't rule that out. I think they're going to have some whiplash here because, if people don't take the vaccine, it doesn't do us much good. So we know it's not going to be 100% effective. And I'm not even passing judgment. I'm just saying, no one thinks that a Moderna or anyone's vaccine is going to be 100% effective. So if we're lucky, it's 70%, really lucky, 80%. It might just be 50%. So if it's 50% effective and only say 40% of the people take it, it's not going to have that much impact on the spread of the virus. If it's 50% effective and we get 80, 90% of the people taking it, then it will be very effective. So, I would imagine that Trump and his followers will be pushing people to take it, if a vaccine's approved. And I think, will they flip around and go, oh yeah, now it's great. Hard to say.
I also have a lot of people in my life of all different stripes, and some of the ones who eschew vaccines in general voted for Trump because they believed that he would back off on the issue of what they call, enforced vaccination. So I'm not sure how that's going to play with the base, but I guess we'll leave that to politics and not the economists. So we'll see what happens with that. Dean Baker, co-founder of the Center for Economic and Policy Research. Thank you so much for joining us. The blog Beat the Press is something that you do not want to miss. What's coming up on this week's edition?
I'll probably put something in there on Trump's taxes because, there's both the immediate issue of Donald Trump, but also, the larger policy issue. I mean, hopefully we won't have Trump forever, but we will have to deal with our tax policy. And it just shows what a horrible mess it is. So, it'd be great if we could treat this as a learning experience.
Dean Baker, thanks again for joining us. I always learn a lot when you come here. You can follow Dean on Twitter at DeanBaker13 or at CEPRDC, which stands for Center for Economic and Policy Research, DC. Thank you so much, Dean. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Julianna. I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on.
If you're watching on YouTube, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We bring you this kind of talk all the time. So I hope you're loving our channel. And I do want to thank everyone who's already subscribed. We're up to 40,000 viewers in just a short time since launching the YouTube channel. If you're watching everywhere else, leave a comment, etc. We're on, you can follow act.tv across platforms because, as I always say in the show, we like to cover our bases.